You do that on purpose, don't you? Good evening, everyone. How are you guys tonight? Happy Thursday. You guys are live here on the Dixiebell Paint Facebook page with Brushed by Brandy. My name is Brandy, and I'm a Dixiebell Paint brand ambassador. And I'm here tonight because we're going to work on a kind of a cool project. So if you guys follow my page at Brushed by Brandy, I posted a piece this week that had a raised stencil design on it, and it was just beautiful. But it was actually really complicated. But I want to come on and give you guys some of my best tips on doing a raised stencil and making it less complicated when you guys do it. So take advantage of the learning that I did last weekend working on that piece. It was actually for my sister who's having a baby. It was her nursery dresser, and it came out absolutely beautiful, but I struggled on it. So the piece we're going to be working on tonight is this Bombay chest here. And if you guys remember, a couple weeks ago, I did another one of these. If you want to show over there, it's this one here. And we did a totally different look on that one. That's got the wood graining tool with the transfer on the front. This one, we're going to do a raised stencil on it. And the reason that I've done textured finishes on these is because they have a textured finish on them. Someone was kind enough before I got these to finish them in it looks like a latex paint that they put on with a roller. It's got a lot of texture in it. So instead of trying to strip that off and make it go away, I am embracing it and I am taking advantage of it. And on that piece, I used it to give texture under my wood grain finish. And on this one, I'm going to use it to give texture under my raised stencil. So we're running with it. What I like to use for raised stenciling is Dixiebell Sea Spray. Sea Spray is a texture additive, but we're going to mix it up tonight and I'm going to make a stencil paste out of it. So some of my tips for when you want to do a raised stencil are, number one, you've got to choose the stencil that you want to use wisely. And I brought out an example of probably what would be a tougher stencil to choose. Not necessarily a poor one, but it's going to be a more advanced stencil. And that's this one here. And I'm going to say this would be more advanced because it's got a lot of fine detail in it. This is a really small detailed stencil. This one's by Redesign with Prima. And I absolutely love it. And it would be beautiful in a raised stencil, but it's got a lot of detail. And all that detail gives you more room for frustration and errors. So I'm going to skip that one tonight. I'm going for the easy one. We're going with the beginner level stencil. I chose this.
That's like my stencil.
No, but what you want to consider is what's the size of the detail and how much detail is in your stencil. So this is a fairly simple repeat pattern. It's just a harlequin stencil. This one's by Royal Design Studio. I've hinted at Dixiebell that I really want a harlequin stencil. We need one. And I like this one because it's an appropriate size for most furniture pieces. And I think it's going to be really cute on here. So I'm going to use this one here. But that's just how you would choose your stencil when you're wanting to go for this look. So I've already got a base coat on my piece right now. This could go on the bare piece itself. But I sprayed a base coat on mine yesterday. Now I'm going to mix my sea spray into a small dish. And sea spray is a powdered consistency. It's about the consistency of like a baking flour. It's a very fine powder. But I really like it for raised stenciling because I can mix it into whatever texture I want. It can either be lumpy and bumpy and lots of texture, or I can mix it super smooth and creamy. It can be creamy or crunchy. You're smiling. I only can guess what you guys are saying over there.
No, nothing.
You guys, my husband Sean is here tonight. If you have any questions while I'm going through this, pop on and ask any questions. I don't know if she's on tonight, but I want you guys to say happy birthday to Natalia Santiago. And Natalia is someone at Dixiebell you guys don't often see, but she's working hard for us every day. She is the head of our social media marketing. So she kind of runs us crazy brand ambassadors, and it is her birthday today. Sometimes she is the person behind the camera answering the questions on our lives that you see. So I don't know if it's her tonight, but come on, you guys, and wish Natalia a happy birthday. Okay, so I just added that sea spray, and then I just took regular water and I poured a little bit in. And I don't have exact measurements that I use at all. What I'm looking for is the consistency of my sea spray. And then I'm just using a little tiny kitchen spatula and I'm stirring the water in to make it into a paste. So another possibility for this would be Dixie mud. Dixie mud is great for raised stenciling, but Dixie mud is a little bit firmer texture. You can add water to this to thin it down, but I like to just use the sea spray, and I can mix up as little or as much as I want. I can make it as, you know, creamy or crunchy as I want. So I think I got a little tiny bit more water than I needed. I want it to be a little thicker, so I just added a little bit of sea spray. I want it to be a nice thick paste, probably literally the consistency of a peanut butter.
You don't have any problems with cracking or anything down the road, right?
No, this is such a thin application. It's like you're just buttering it on. It's a very, very thin application. So not only that, sorry, this is from my dish has old paint on it. But I'm also going to put this underneath 2 coats of paint and then probably 2 coats of clear coat. So it's going to be well protected. And it will last fine. A lot of people ask questions about the dresser that I did. And I know you guys can't feel it looking at photos on camera, but it feels like it's part of the dresser. I think if you took a hammer to it, it would damage it. But if you take a hammer to your furniture piece, it's going to damage it anyways.
Here, let's try.
Yeah, so somebody else's furniture piece, please. Okay, so I'm going to take my stencil and I'm going to kind of look at what the layout of it would be. I don't really care if I start in the center or not. I'm not quite that perfect. And I just want it to be on the drawer fronts here. I'm not going to go all the way up onto the trim. Now, one of the challenges on this piece here is going to be that my piece itself has curvature. My stencil's a little wonky too. So I'm looking at how this will best fit my piece. I probably want my harlequin, the points of my, the tips of my diamonds to run all the way to the top of my drawer.
What's the body color right now?
This is Hurricane Gray. I'm sorry, that was a great question. I should have told you guys that. This is Dixiebell Hurricane Gray. I did this piece on camera yesterday. I sprayed this with the Wagner Home Decor sprayer on the Wagner page. So if you guys want to see this base coat being applied with the sprayer, that's on the Wagner page from yesterday. I also shared it to my page if you want to find it there too. But this is Dixiebell Hurricane Gray, which I love because it's a nice medium neutral gray. Now I'm going to take some spray adhesive. Hey, Sas, can you get that spray bottle that's up there next to the blue bin? But I also wanted to talk to you about spray adhesive because they're, oh, I'm sorry, it's the red one, the red and the black one, yeah. Not all spray adhesives are created equal. And I've got this one. This is by Scotch. It's called Super 77. I really don't like it. I own it and I don't want to use it, but I'm getting really low on this one, so I might need to. This is by 3M. This is also called Super 77, which now makes me question if Scotch is 3M too. So, but I swear these are not the same.
Perception.
It could be that the spray can, just the nozzle on this is different, but I prefer this one here. So I'm going to clean off the tip because it does get clogged up with the adhesive on it. So I just scrape it off with my fingernail a little bit. And then I'm going to take my stencil and I'm going to spray my stencil. Now, this is going to get spray adhesive onto the back of my stencil. It does not transfer to my piece. It's going to stay on my stencil. It does tend to build up, so every few uses I will come back to my stencil and I clean them. I put a thin layer of citrus strip on it and it wipes it right off. I know some people have said Goo Gone, things like that, but I just use the citrus strip as a gentle stripper and it will just strip that adhesive off. I do that after every few uses. So I'm going to spray my stencil here. Be careful not to spray onto my piece. It doesn't take a lot. And then I'm going to line it up kind of with the placement that I chose for my stencil. And you'll be able to see right away if you need a little bit more adhesive, you can always add more. And I do need a little bit more. It's not really sticking to my piece. And that could be that my adhesive is getting really old. I'm due for a new container. Home Depot, here we come. Okay, because I want this stencil to stick down onto my furniture piece. So can you guys see how I just press that lightly? I'm not worried about this section here. I'm going to focus on one drawer at a time. but I was able to just press that down, and now it's like a giant sticker onto my furniture piece. So then I'm going to take my sea spray mixture, which now looks like this. It is about like peanut butter. It's nice and thick. And I'm going to apply it with a putty knife. This is the Dixiebell putty knife. It's also on their page. I think it's on the same page as, is it under tools on the website? So this is their putty knife. But it's just a, what is that, a 2-inch putty knife, plastic. You can use any kind of tools that you want for this. I brought out a few different things. This is a larger putty knife. This is a cake spatula. A credit card works great for this. Any kind of little scraping tool that you have available will work. And you can play with different kind of tools and see what kind of texture you get out of it, what works best for you.
I would prefer if you use a credit card, but right after you get it out of the envelope so you don't spend anything on it.
Oh yeah, because that's my problem.
And then just ditch it.
Yeah, I'm such a big spender. And then I'm just going to start scraping it on. Now I don't want to get underneath my stencil. And here I've got a little piece that's kind of raised because my hardware hole is under there. So I'm going to press it down with my finger. And then I'm not going to scrape it towards the line of my stencil because I don't want it bleeding underneath that stencil. That's how you kind of make a mess of it. So I'm going to scrape it away from the edges of my stencil, and a super thin coat is all I want. Now this one, the putty knife, is a little bit more of a challenge because my piece has a curve to it. So another tool might be better for this particular piece. So this is that little cake spatula. And you can leave it with a little bit of texture in your stencil if you want, which is kind of a cool look. I'm going to add a little bit more. I want to make sure my gray is all covered. But this is where the adhesive helps a little bit. Yeah, there, that's kind of what I want. And I'm just going to play around with the thickness of my stencil. I don't want to take it off, but I kind of want to smooth at it. So I like that one right there. And it can kind of take a little bit of practice. So I want to make this before. Yeah, but what's hard on this is my piece is curved. So I don't want my paste to go underneath my stencil when I push on it. So I've got to kind of be careful of that. So every piece is going to come with its challenges. They don't have to all be the same. When I'm done with this, it's going to dry on here. And when it dries, it's going to dry white. That's how you'll know that it's dry. So it's going to turn from this kind of beigey color to a white. Susan says, yeah, you have electricity again. Yes, we're back. We actually got electricity last week after my live. It was like 30 minutes after the live. It was, yeah, or if not an hour after my live. So we heard, you guys, if you watched my live from last week, we were in the dark. We had no power. We were using daylight. And we heard PG&E drive through the neighborhood, which sounded like this, zoom. And we were like, oh, I guess they just checked our lines. And sure enough, our power came back on like a minute after that. So just for the technicality, what did they sound like when they were driving through? That was a one-time thing. Nice try. You can also use a brush for this if you want to. You can kind of dab a brush on, and that'll give you a little bit of texture inside your stencil. That's kind of a cool look too. So I'm getting this a little bit smoother in theory. And it takes a little bit of time. You want to be patient with it. This is not a quick application. That's why this was, I would probably consider this a more advanced technique if you're going to start out with something. If you're going to try doing a raised stencil, try doing it on a smaller piece, and then consider things like how much detail is in your stencil. And so what is this that you're using? And so how did you mix? So this is a little cake spatula. And you know what the material. Oh, I'm sorry. I am using Dixiebell Sea Spray, and I mixed it kind of arbitrarily. I don't have an exact mixture, but I mixed it to about the consistency of peanut butter. You know what I really want? I really want my scrapers by the Redesign with Prima scrapers. That's what I really want. I think they're on the sink. Hang on one second. It has more flexibility to it. Oh, thank you, Trish, for clarifying. She wrote the zoom down. That's what they sounded like. Of course, it's not on the sink.
Well, I guess we're just gonna watch paint dry.
I'm coming. I can take a hint. I don't like how that scraper isn't as flexible as I'd like. So I'm looking for...
So Megan, this actually gives you some texture. Is basically why you would do this.
Oh, here we go.
It just gives you something different.
I found it. Yay me.
It's not very thick. I mean, as you can see, you're basically using the thickness of that stencil.
Yeah, and there are, like Redesign with Prima makes stencils that are made for texture. They're actually a little bit thicker stencil. So if you want your texture to be a little bit thicker, you can use a thicker stencil. So these are little texture tools. They're by Redesign with Prima. And I'm choosing this right now because it's got that little bit of flexibility and it's smaller.
Dang it, I missed my story time chance.
What?
Oh,
Oh.
Sheila said because you were over there, it was my chance.
Sean doesn't have any good stories.
I got
about
nothing.
me. Yeah, that's what.
I want to sleep.
I make sure that I live clean. I don't give him any ammo on me. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm liking this better. It's a little bit smaller, and that's just part of like playing around. I didn't like this when I was doing the dresser for my sister. It was too small. So that was a different stencil and a different piece. So now I just kind of butter it in around my stencil, being careful that I'm not pushing it underneath my stencil. And I'm going to come down here and get this little trim piece in between my drawers. And it's okay if it gets like here, I got a little bit into the crease between my drawer and this trim. And that's okay because this will sand off when it's dry, or you can also just chip it right off too. It's going to dry nice and hard.
Sea spray and water, right?
Just sea spray and water. I'm going to show you another alternative. This is just a small natural bristle brush. You can use kind of a dabbing. Now this is going to give you more texture. The brush is pulling away from it will give you more texture. So if you want more, that's another option. I'm going for more of a kind of a smooth look. It's not perfectly smooth. Now here where I've got curvature to my piece, I'm just going to push my stencil down a little bit. And again, not push my texture additive underneath my stencil. I can clean off these edges in between my drawers. I can either come back with my little spatula tool and get in between like this, pull it back out, and then I can sand that off when it's dry. It just sands really nicely.
Can you mix paint in this?
Yes, you can. So when this dries, my version of this doesn't have any paint in it. I have another video using this kind of same technique, but I mix paint into my sea spray. And you can, and then it will dry whatever paint color you choose. Now I'm going to paint over this. So I did not mix any paint into this because I don't need to. I'm going to cover it anyways.
So when this dries, is it more like a spackle? Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of like drywall mud. If I had to compare what it dries like. But it dries rock hard. It's not coming off your piece. I promise you that. I don't know what this stuff is actually made of, but it's not coming off. And then I'm going to come do this last one right here. I'm holding it down because my piece has curvature to it. So when I stuck this to my piece, it didn't stick the same all the way around. And I don't want... It's going to happen. You're going to get some of this that goes underneath your stencil. It's just going to happen. But I want to try to minimize that. It is messy. You're going to get this sea spray all over your fingers. And it takes time.
Gloria says you have patience.
Yeah, this is a time-consuming one, but I love the look of it. I love this look. Love.
I've trained you well. See all the patience you use towards
me.
me.
So I think I'm going to take this off, and I'm going to bring my stencil down to try to do this, because can you see how much curvature it has? Because I tried to stick it up here. It's not the same, and so this would be really hard for me to work around. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this. You guys see how cool that's going to be? It's just going to be a little bit of texture. And then when I come back and paint my piece, This is going to be underneath. Let's see. I'm going to open this drawer. And I can just scrape the bottom of this drawer off. And that'll clean that line up. And same with this one here.
Where'd I put it?
That would have taken me an hour to find. And it's stuck in there.
An hour to get out.
So right now, this is totally wet and fragile. So you don't want to touch it. It's going to take probably a couple hours to dry. And you'll start seeing it turn from this creamy beige color to a white. Once it's all the way white, that's how you know it's dry. And then you can come back and sand it.
Same consistency on your sister's piece, right?
Yeah, exactly the same consistency. I just used a different stencil, really. Now I've got a little bit here that seeped underneath my stencil. This is a nice simple design, so I can come back and clean these edges up pretty well. So I'm just going to clean up around it. This one's a little... Again, they don't have to be perfect. My sister's piece was not perfect either, if you really want to pick it apart. Which kind of brings up an interesting point. I had a conversation with somebody at a conference I recently taught at, which was in Southern California, the Redesign with Prima conference. And they asked about flaws in pieces and how come our pieces don't ever have flaws. And I said, are you crazy? They absolutely have flaws. I can show you where they all are. But I think because you're seeing these beautiful photos, you don't realize that even the most beautifully photographed pieces, if you get up close, are still hand-painted pieces, and they're still going to have flaws in them. Mine are no exception to that. I don't give my customers the misconception that they're going to be absolutely perfect. They come with the flaws that any hand-painted piece would have.
So where did you get the stencil?
So this stencil is by Royal Design Stencils.
And then as far as your sea spray, it's just the sea spray and water. Did you put anything else in it?
No, that's it. Just sea spray and water. I just made it into a paste. You can put paint in it if you want your harlequin or whatever stencil design you want to use. In this case, it would be harlequin. If you want your stencil design to be colored, in my case, I'm going to paint over this. So it's going to have, you're just going to see the texture, but it's going to be in the same colors as my body is.
And then the glue that you used, you just basically sprayed on some 3M 77?
Yep.
Is that what it was?
Super 77
Super
spray adhesive.
77.
It's available at Home Depot in the adhesive section. So with your like Gorilla Glue and things like that, you'll find the spray adhesive there too. Wood glue, it's with all that stuff.
Yes, Mona, it's kind of like, it's spackle.
Yeah, it is. It's spackle with a flare. It's fancy spackle. Sea spray is cool. You can use sea spray for all kinds of different texture. In this case, I'm just using it to get texture for my stencil, but you can use it to get, make your paint kind of, chippy and look like it's built up a little bit. Those looks really great. There's all kinds of looks you can get with a little bit of texture.
And I know there was a comment back in there about, I just wanted to answer or speak to it, flexible metal scrapers at Home Depot. And on curved pieces especially, I would probably say that's why a lot of this is plastic or rubber as far as these little tools, because you can scrape your paint and then you'd really be in a world of hurt. Yeah, I love these. These are flexible silicone. And they're more flexible than like these plastic putty knives even. This has flex to it, but I can go any which way with this just by pressing it. These come in a pack of 2. If I could find the larger one, I'd probably choose the larger one right now, but I have no clue where that one is. I haven't seen it in a while now. Can you do me a favor? Turn that can of spray around real quick.
This one?
Or at least hold it up so I can... Bam! Product placement.
I do not work for 3M.
Here come the disclosures. And
I have
go.
No relationship with them whatsoever. If they're watching, though, give me a call.
I do not condone drinking, eating it, or...
Yeah, please use your sea spray responsibly.
If it talks to you, that is a problem.
So you can see, this is going to take me forever. I would not consider this a beginner technique at all. And it did. The last time I did this, it takes forever to get it nice and smooth and even how you want it. Get your stencil on right. It doesn't help that I chose a curved piece. But if you've got plain flat fronts, this is a great way to add some interest to a really plain front. Some of the things I like to do when I've got just really, really plain pieces, but they're really good quality, you know, but just they didn't have that much design. I use either paint, and you can use paint for some blending to add dimension. You can use molds to add dimension. You can use this technique here, erase stencil, to add dimension, but there's different ways that you can add interest to even the plainest of pieces out there. And this is one of them. So mine's not super plain, but I think it's going to be really cute with this harlequin. I am even going to do this on the top because this relief is so thin. It's really super thin. You'll still be able to place like a glass on top of this piece, even if I do this technique over it.
Could you put a stencil over this?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to.
Or a transfer, sorry.
Oh, a transfer. Yeah, you absolutely can. I can't even stress to you how thin this application is. So it's adding texture, but it's like a fingernail thickness.
Yeah, it's probably 2 sheets of paper. I mean, it's very thin.
It's so thin, but you're going to notice it when the piece is done. It's going to have that little bit of texture. It's just so minimal. That absolutely, you could put a transfer over it. And
then some hurricane gray behind it.
Yeah, hurricane gray is my body color on this piece. I'm not going to use a transfer on this one, but I am going to use some color to give dimension to these. So I'm thinking I'm going to use black and white to go with my gray. And then maybe even a little bit of gold. That's kind of where my brain is going on this one. So I'm not going to have a whole lot of pattern to go with this, but I'm going to add some extra interest with the color. And how I'll do that is once this is all dry and I've got my paint finish done over the top, you can take your stencil and put it back over the top again and either put a gilding wax just where you want it. So you just place your stencil on the dry complete version, and then I can take my finger and just put gilding wax over one diamond here, one diamond there. I could do a different paint color if I wanted to, so you can really get, you know, complex with this look. So I'm just going to keep going with this. It's going to take me forever. I kind of anticipated that. And I'm matching up the corners on my little harlequin. My stencil's sticking into the ones next to it a little bit. That's okay because they're textured. I don't want it to take it off, so I'm not going to press it in there. But I want to make sure my corners are touching. There we go. And then same thing, I'll just press the stencil down. Now my stencil's getting the sea spray all over it. My stencil's a huge mess right now. And so every few applications, like I might get through this first top drawer and then I'll need to take this stencil and go wash it. So get some of this buildup off, because then it starts transferring to other places on your piece. And you just start creating a mess. So I'll take my stencil, this rinses right off with soap and water. Actually, not even soap, just water. This sea spray, when it's wet, will wash right off. So I will go wash my stencil off. And then using it while it's clean will make my life so much easier. But I plan to do this all the way down the front. I'm going to do the sides and I'm going to do the top. So that gives you an idea, the time commitment that you're going to put into a look like this.
It's not good for me.
Yeah, sorry, you're busy. But I'll tell you, the impact overall, you know, go back to my page if you don't know the piece I'm talking about. My sister's piece was absolutely gorgeous. In person, it was gorgeous. It was just the right amount of interest without being too much or overbearing or gaudy, or just a little bit of texture. Very subtle, very pretty. So I'm not, you know, harlequin is probably more of like a whimsical pattern. And I don't do a lot of whimsical design, like kind of like Tracy from Tracy's Fancy. She does a lot of mixed patterns, and but I think harlequin is still a fairly simple geometric design that can go with a lot of different styles.
Where do you get the sea spray?
Sea spray is a Dixiebell product. It is a Dixiebell product. It is on the Dixiebell paint website. So I put my link in the post above. That's my affiliate link. I always appreciate purchases made through there. You can also go to the Dixiebell website and you can find a retailer near you. And if they're a premier retailer, it will tell you on the website, and they should have sea spray in stock. Otherwise, you might want to check and just give that retailer a call beforehand and make sure sea spray is an item that they carry. But it is a Dixiebell paint product. It's awesome. I was scared of it at first. I didn't really know how to use it, what to do with it. And then once I started using it, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much you can do with this. So I'm leaving this line right here. I'm going to let it dry before I come back and clean it off. Now you can see that there's going to be little edges that are, you know, here I've got a little piece sticking off. I'm not going to worry about that because if I come back to that with a fine sandpaper afterwards, after it's dry, those just chip right off. So don't worry about that at this point. I would worry about just getting your texture on, and then there's going to be some cleanup afterwards that comes with sanding it, painting over the top of it.
Apparently I get to spend quality time with you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what this is, apparently.
Oh, yeah, this is our date.
Yeah.
This is our date night, technically. It's really the only time we get without our kids for any period of time. So we're going to call this Thursday night date night with Brandy and Sean.
Really?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, yay.
This is exactly what you would have chosen to do.
Of course.
I'll tell you what, I'll spice it
Yet
up.
again, I like to sleep.
I'll spice it up and we can go get a pizza after this.
Oh, yeah.
So you know what? The curvature of my piece has changed a little bit, and I actually really like how this next layer is going. So I'm going to go ahead and carry down to this one.
Carry on.
Carry on. It doesn't have the adhesive on it, but if I hold it...
Vicky's asking if that's a matchbook you're using. That's pretty good. But no, that is not. What is it that you're using? This is
a little spatula tool. These are by Redesign with Prima. Mine's all messy now, like my fingers. But
it's the size of one.
Yeah, probably. A little bit smaller. There's a flexible silicone, and it's like a spatula. So they come in a pack of 2. The second one's about double this size. And they're really nice for doing texture like this. I like the size of it. In fact, see here I have excess on the parts of my stencil that I'm not using. I can kind of go clean that up and then use it here. But they really scrape. So I started out in the video using just a regular scraper blade, and that was just a little bit too big. So this is a better tool for my piece. And you'll have to kind of play around. Like I didn't use this when I was doing the last piece that I did. I didn't use this tool. It didn't work as well. So you'll need to play around and see what is easier, whether it's a credit card or a scraper blade or one of these spatula tools. What makes your life easier? Putting this on. I'm trying to get it kind of even. So I'm just floating it out a little bit.
So let's go back to the difference between using this and then using mud.
You could definitely use Dixie mud. Dixie mud is a little bit thicker, so I'd probably want to add a little bit of water to it. But Dixie mud is great for this too. I think it's really just personal preference. I've gotten used to using sea spray for it. I like that I can mix sea spray into any amount and consistency that I like. You can mix the mud too, though. If you take a little bit out of the container and put a little bit of water in it, you can thin that out too. So I think it's just personal preference, maybe even just what you have on hand. So that one I got another level out of. So I'm going to keep going until I get to the bottom of this drawer. Now I'm getting kind of to a point on this where it might be hard to keep putting my stencil on. Like if I came here and tried to replace it, I'm going to start overlapping, and then it's going to mess up the parts I've already done. So I may wait for some of this to dry and then come back. Here I'm touching up one. So the edge of it just got a little bit messed up, but you see it's a nice, this is a nice straight edge stencil. So I can just take my scraper tool and fix the edges just like that once my stencil is already on. Any places that I feel like I want to be a little bit thicker or smooth them out or whatever I need to do to it. So I like this. And then spots like this, you see the contrast because my background is gray, but spots like this and these here, these will either sand off or you won't even see them when I'm done. So I don't worry about the little tiny spots in between. You don't have to try to get a wet rag and clean it or anything like that. That's going to totally go away. So this is just the first step of a few steps in getting this look.
Now, just to go back and address a question from earlier, yes, you can tint this with paint.
Mm-hmm. When this dries, so it's going on kind of a creamy beige color, it's going to dry to a pure total white. Now I'm not going to leave this even in the white. I'm going to put paint over the top of it. So I didn't add paint to my mixture, but if you wanted to, you could absolutely add paint to your mixture. You know, if you wanted these to be black, add a little bit of caviar to it. Now you're starting out with a white base, you know, creamy white in this case. So you'll probably need a little bit of more paint if you're using a darker color. But yeah, you can absolutely tint this. I've got a video on my YouTube channel tinting the sea spray to a color and stenciling it right on. And in that case, I did not paint over the top of it like I'm going to do with this one.
So once again, as far as the thickness, it's just the thickness of the stencil.
Yeah, barely.
It's just enough to give it some...
Barely of a fingernail. It's just enough to give it a little bit of dimension in my finished product. You will still see it, but it's not enough that it's going to stick out and get your clothes caught on it, or, you know, I don't even know what might happen, but it's a very subtle look. I like it because it's just enough to give you the look, but without getting any, you know, texture that might be fragile. It's so shallow that chipping this off in chunks or anything, you don't really have to worry about that. So that's kind of it. I'm going to go through this step and then I will come back and do several more steps afterwards. Meaning I'll sand this. I will paint over top. I'll probably decorate it with some waxes. I'm just cleaning the excess off the top of this drawer. I can do that when it dries too. And then I can get the excess from the underside of this lip.
Look at you getting all crazy.
Yeah, super easy. Just clean that up. But that's pretty much it. So I've got several more steps before I'm going to be able to call this one finished.
So what are you going to put over this?
Over this, I'm going to, once this is dry, I will lightly sand it. I will come back and do my paint finish over the top of it, whatever paint finish I'm going to do.
So you're not painting this the same color as the Hurricane Gray?
Probably not. I'm thinking I'm going to do a little bit of blending over it.
Because if you were going to do that, wouldn't you stencil and then paint over?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I just use this as my base. This is just my base color. That's all that this is. Whoever painted this before me had painted this with some really bright colored flowers and stuff on here in addition to their latex paint. So I was really just trying to, I couldn't even think. Looking at it was so loud. I really just needed to take it down a notch. So I sprayed this in the Hurricane Gray, but I think I'm going to do some blending over the front of it. And then I will probably take my stencil and I'll put it over and just do some waxing onto a couple of my different harlequins. All of them. I don't know how many.
So that'll answer the question of if you're going to put the stencil over it to treat whatever you're going to, and that's the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, you can. I mean, I could just put,
unless you're going a solid color.
I could just put paint over this and let it just be a really subtle paint finish. In my case, I'm going to add a little bit of waxes to it afterwards. So that kind of answers that. But I'm going to let you guys go, and that's the basics of a textured stencil with sea spray. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'm here live every Thursday evening, same time at 9 p.m. Eastern on the Dixiebell Paint Facebook page. Go follow me and Dixiebell on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. And I'll see you guys next Thursday. Thank you so much.